Welcome, everyone. I see that we're just at 10, and since we have a full schedule ahead of us, I figure we just get started, and then hopefully the people who join a little bit later won't miss too much. Let's see. So welcome to this side event named The Way Forward, developing gender-sensitive treatment programs to eradicate barriers for women. My name is Regina Mattsson, and I represent WFAD, which is a multilateral community of NGOs and individuals. And with over 300 member organizations in almost 60 countries, 59 countries to be exact, our joint aims include to strengthen prevention, increase access to treatment, and to promote recovery. And last year, 2020, at our General Assembly, our members adopted a 10-year strategic plan to focus particularly on the needs and the rights of women and children within our field. And as a network stretching over all world regions, we hold this responsibility to address these specific issues and to ensure that they are made part of all national and international debates. So the adoption of this 10-year plan and the implementation of our gender working group are imperative steps in this direction. I would like to start by thanking our co-organizers, Dianova International, Celebrate Recovery, and Women's Organizations Committee on Alcohol and Drug Issues, as well as our fantastic speakers that are here today, and of course, the participants who have showed interest in this great event. So I can safely say that I speak for all of the co-organizers when I say that it's time that we break these barriers that hinder women from accessing and adhering to addiction services. When we met last year in Vienna, or when some of us met last year, right before the world went on lockdown, we organized an event with similar speakers as of today, where we talked about these barriers. And this event today is more of a follow-up from last year, where we have partnered with Dianova to offer a way forward, meeting these needs and tackling the barriers in place that are hindering women. So it is a great pleasure to be launching this new way forward today. And we do have a great event ahead of us with an impressive panel who will represent this infographic, highlight trauma-informed treatment, and provide a best practice example in Iran. So if you have questions, comments, or anything, you're welcome to use the chat or the Q&A function. And I will keep the bios short because I want to give as much time as possible to our speakers today. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our first speaker, Gisela Hansen Rodriguez. She is a she holds a PhD in clinical psychologist and gender-based violence. She has extensive experience in drug treatment and intervention in therapeutic communities. A specialist on gender, stigma, and childhood approach in the field of addictions. Who could be better than Gisela to present this way forward? Welcome, Gisela, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Regina, for this lovely presentation. I'm very happy to be here. First of all, I want to thank the invitation to participate, and also I'm delighted to share this space with such a great panelist. For me, it's an honor and a pleasure. Thank you. Well, as you say, my professional experience began 50 years ago, working with women who use drugs and who also suffer multiple violence. My PhD was focused on gender-based barriers, specifically in therapeutic communities. So today we are going here to talk about all those barriers and present some proposals to overcome them, tackle them through the presentation of an infographics made in collaboration by Dianova and World Federation Against Drugs. So let me share my screen. Okay, so first of all, just please let me introduce the Dianova International Network. Our organization consists of an international network of NGOs, associations, and foundations operating in America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. Above all, dedicated to social change, our goal is to defend health, equality, and inclusion for all, and more specifically for those more vulnerable. Well, just few key ideas to start. A gender-sensitive approach should take into account gender-based difference when looking at any phenomena, policy, or process. Gender approach applied to the field of drugs phenomena implies, first of all, to consider particularity of gender that impacts in drug use and recovery. And second, eliminate the base gender disadvantage in drug treatment accessibility and adherence, and that is related directly with gender-based barriers that we are going to discuss today. So according to 2015 World Drug Report, you know that 1 out of every 3 drug user was a woman, but only 1 out of every 5 people in treatment was a woman. This information from 2015 might seem old, but unfortunately, nowadays, women still represent a very small percentage in people in treatment. There are specific gender barriers to access and remain in treatment, especially in inpatient treatment, like being the primary caregiver of children, that drug use takes place in the domestic space, and this leads to a lack of visibility and a chronification of these problems. And especially the double stigma and the added social penalty experienced by women who use drugs. And of course, the alarming prevalence of gender-based violence in women who use drugs compared to women from general population. Well, for this reason, I'm very happy to present here today the infographic produced by, as mentioned before, produced by Dianova and World Federation Against Drugs regarding the gender barriers that women who use drugs must overcome in order to access, but also to remain in drug treatment services. This information shows a series of barriers, specifically 6, that we have considered essential to design and to implement gender-sensitive treatments. Well, a second goal of this infographic, we have 2 main goals, but the second goal is to raise awareness about gender-based barriers between policymakers, NGOs, and drug treatment professional staff, and the need to address them to eliminate those gender-based barriers, disadvantage in drug treatment accessibility and adherence. This is why this infographic is now available in English, but it will very soon available in French and Spanish as well, and you will be able to find it in our websites and social media, so we kindly ask you to spread it once you get it. Well, to start, the first barriers that we mentioned in this infographic is the lack of gender perspective in treatment. Programs should be designed from a gender perspective, especially in such areas like schedules, regulations, location, therapeutic activities, and infrastructures. The second one that we mentioned in this infographic is the invisibility of women who use drugs and has a problematic drug use. We need greater knowledge of this characteristic of addictions in women should be promoted, and protocols and training should be adapted and improved. Also, sex disaggregated data should be gathered, like, for example, economic income, therapeutic discharge, etc. The third one is the lack of collaborations between addiction services and other services. It is necessary to establish effective working linkage with other services providers to provide comprehensive assistance to women who use drugs, like well-being services, child services, mental health services, etc. The fourth one is stereotype attitudes and belief on behalf of services providers. Gender sensitivity awareness and training are of critical importance for all staff, including sessions to question their own attitudes and belief regarding women who use drugs. This is very, very important in order to create gender sensitive treatment, but above all, implementation. The fifth one is the lack of a gender-based violence focus during addiction treatment. Violence is a contributing factor in substance use. There is a strong linkage between violence and drug use, and it is therefore necessary to address both problems in a comprehensive way in order to work not only substance use, but also on those of violence and drug use with the same importance, with the same focus. They are both that important in treatment. The sixth one, women who use drugs face a double stigma is nothing new. I'm saying gender-sensitive prevention campaigns can help to reduce this stigma relating to women who use drugs. improve their quality of life, and access and adherence to treatment. In addition, adequate training must be provided to healthcare providers to reduce stigma and to inform women what kind of specific services they can go with. So, last, some key ideas to sum up. I would like to mention some key issues in order to design and implement a gender-sensitive addiction treatment program. We have to consider those gender-based barriers in order to address them and reduce the access gap to drug treatment programs with greater emphasis on residential programs and harm reduction programs. We don't need big budgets to do it. We just have to be open to rethink traditional treatment program and adjust them from a gender-sensitive design, treatment, and of course, implementation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gisela, for presenting this way forward document so well. There may be some questions at the end, which will save some time if time allows, which I think that it will. So please, you're welcome to ask questions and answers. And thank you again, Gisela, for presenting this fantastic document. So our next speaker will go more into one of the topics that was highlighted by Gisela, which is the need of trauma-informed treatment. This is Britt Fredenman, who is the project manager of BellaNet in Women's Organizations Committee on Alcohol and Drug Issues. Britt, the floor is yours. Happy that you're here.
Thank you very much. Dear ladies, gentlemen, friends and colleagues, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Gender-sensitive alcohol and drug issues are trauma-informed approach. Next slide, please. I represent WFAD, Women's Organizations Committee on Alcohol and Drug Issues in Sweden. Founded in 1943, an umbrella organization with 39 member organizations embraces a total of 320,000 women. Dependency on alcohol, narcotics, and drugs is a national health problem, girls and women being the most vulnerable groups. Research is largely based on men as well as various forms of treatment and care. WFAD activities concentrate on girls and women. Next slide, please. We are also members of other organizations and networks such as Swedish Women's Lobby, NGOs working for a restrictive drug policy, Swedish Council for Information on Alcohol and Other Drugs, European Women's Lobby. Next page, please. International Council of Alcohol and Addiction, World Federation Against Drugs, NORDAN, the Nordic Alcohol and Drug Policy Network, and Vienna NGO Committee on Drugs. WFAD advocates for gender-informed treatment. Treatment for women only with focus on building self-esteem, dealing with anxiety and depression, creating a safe environment for working with feelings of guilt and shame, supporting the responsibilities within the family. Traditional treatments usually do not include these methods. Key principles of a trauma-informed approach. A trauma-informed approach reflects adherence to 6 key principles rather than a prescribed set of practices or procedures. These principles may be generalized across multiple types of settings, although terminology and application may be setting or sector specific. Safety, trustworthiness and transparency, peer support, collaboration and mutuality, empowerment, voice and choice, cultural, historical, and gender issues. Trauma-specific interventions. Trauma-specific intervention programs generally recognize the following. The survivors need to be respected, informed, connected, and hopeful regarding their own recovery. The interrelation between trauma and symptoms of trauma such as substance abuse, eating disorders, depression, and anxiety. The need to work in a collaborative way with survivors, family and friends of the survivor, and other human services agencies in a manner that will empower survivors and consumers. And trauma-informed approach. A program, organization, or system that is trauma-informed realizes the widespread impact of trauma and understands potential paths for recovery, recognizes the signs and symptoms of trauma in clients, families, staff, and others involved with the system, responds by fully integrating knowledge about trauma into policies, procedures, and practices, and seeks to actively resist re-traumatization. A trauma-informed approach can be implemented in any type of service setting or organization and is distinct from trauma-specific interventions or treatments that are designed specially to address the consequences of trauma and to facilitate healing. I conclude with the following 9 points with demands on UN. From our organization, WFAD, together with NGO ICAA. The 9 points show the way forward to raise awareness on all levels what trauma-informed means. 1. That a better recognition be given to the Convention of the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, to ensure that the sex and gender-specific particular needs of girls and women in all areas of policymaking, research concerning education, empowerment skills, prevention and treatment of the harmful misuse of psychoactive substances are addressed. 2. That all global conventions on psychotropic substances emphasize on the necessity to be gender sensitive and specific. 3. That all countries commit to develop policies and strategies to reduce or eliminate the burden of health and crime caused by the targeted marketing of alcohol and other psychoactive substances, whether legal or illegal, to adolescents, young women, and other vulnerable populations. 4. That indigenous and minority peoples who are not fairly represented in the field of problematic psychoactive substance use and the criminal justice system be consulted and that their needs be met with appropriate and accessible, gendered and culturally sensitive care and research in order to reduce these incidents. 5. That the policies on research and project funding be reviewed to ensure that they are gender balanced and inclusive. 6. That an action plan be designed from a women perspective to ensure that treatment of addicted women in conflict with the law is respectful, gender and culturally specific, and trauma-informed. 7. That training curricula for judges, attorneys, prosecutors, criminal justice, and social service workers, law enforcement personnel, and others responding to the needs of girls and women ensure that they acquire the knowledge, sensitivity, and respect to produce effective and proactive interventions. 8. That an action plan be designed and implemented to ensure the availability and appropriate treatment, prevention, support, and empowerment for mothers with young children. 9. That each country intensifies their efforts to implement CEDAW and to examine all social service, medical and criminal justice practices to ensure that all addicted women receive treatment based on a social justice, respect with full recognition of their cultural and gender needs. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so very much, Britt, for so brilliantly showcasing the need of or for trauma-informed treatment and for the fantastic work that you're all doing at WFAD and advocating for gender-sensitive policies in all areas. I see we have, thank you. I see we have questions coming in. I will like to have our final speaker, and then we have quite some time for questions and answers at the end. So, last but definitely not least, I would like to welcome Sara Esmizade. Sara is from the Asian Drug Demand Reduction and NGOs Association. She has a background in sociology and is currently a PhD student in sociology as well. Sara has been working with drug demand reduction in Iran for over 10 years, working with drug prevention, harm reduction, and treatment for women and youth, as well as developing and piloting gender-responsive programs in a conservative environment. So welcome, Sara. We look forward to hearing your presentation.
Thank you very much, Regina, for your lovely introduction. First of all, I want to thank you and WFAD for providing this opportunity. And actually, it's a pleasure for me to be here with you today. I would like to share my screen and go to the point. Okay, actually, my presentation today is about what we are doing on the ground in Iran. And I see that other speakers fully covered the barriers of gender-sensitive treatment in macro and micro levels. So I go to some details about a gender-sensitive program in a conservative environment. Actually, I say I would like to just give a short background about treatment programs for women in Iran. Drug treatment programs in Iran are not designed to be gender sensitive. Actually, in fact, due to some cultural barriers, at first the concept of women using drug was a taboo in Iran. So all the programs were designed for men. And after, the need for treatment for women emerged in the society, they just simply extended the programs that were designed for men to women with no adjustments for women-specific needs. Our first attempt in Iran to have a gender-sensitive treatment program was a medication assistant residential center established by River Society with a special program for pregnant women. Because at that time there was no program for treatment program for pregnant women in Iran. But we decided to keep our mind and program open to every changes that might be needed in the program to respond to specific needs of women. So we were admitting pregnant women, and since there was no proper postpartum care available for those women and their newborn, so we were forced to actually took the responsibility for them in our program. After a while, actually, we found ourselves admitting women with their toddlers simply because there were no family members or other kind of care for their children out of the center. Okay. Obviously, after 2 years, we needed a bigger place and some guidelines actually to manage the program and provide all the services for these women. So we moved to a bigger place and established Khane Parvin as a pilot program to develop a guideline for gender-sensitive programs for women in the country. And our target group were, at first, we think that we can cover all drug-using women who needed treatment for drug use, and we had some services in place like pregnancy programs, mother and child programs, medication assisted program, and abstinence-based program. Of course, we knew that in the process we will need to add other programs and other services to the program. Our primary goal was identifying different needs of women and actually providing response for them, and finally developing a guideline to be used across the country. Okay, but in reality, we had a different target group actually. Almost all clients come to Khane Parvin from a poor socioeconomic background, and they are referred by social service agencies and other NGOs who work with us in this field. Many come from families with parental drug use, or they have been living with a drug using partner for a long time. Many of them have a history of homelessness and sex work, and many of them have been rejected and excluded by their family for years and don't have any kind of social support. Also we get clients from Afghan communities in Iran. Over the course of 1-2 years, we identified some needs and focused on them. Actually, we realized that besides what we have in place already, there were needs for parallel programs for children and newborns. You know, we had newborns with drug-related issues, and they needed detoxification. We needed preschool and school programs. You know, child in the center days. Actually, we realized that we cannot simply send them to public schools and public preschools because they were not trained and they didn't have the skills to get along with other children and survive in the school environment. So they needed special care and special school programs. And trauma-informed therapy, of course, was necessary, and ADHD treatment for children. You know, many children come with ADHD to the center. And dental services, you know, it appears that dental services are essential part of recovery and re-identification of self for our clients. And sexual needs, you know, right after detoxification, sexual needs emerge. And if we cannot provide proper response for them, you know, successful recovery would not happen. Domestic violence informed therapy and education, legal services for child custody, replacing lost ID, and rape and pregnancy by rape. Parenting skills, vocational training, income generating programs, housing programs for after discharge, and family reintegration programs. Actually, in the process, we learned that we have to compromise a lot. Actually, sometimes we had to compromise on some basics to be able to continue our work and survive in the environment. We needed to stay constantly alerted about culturally and legally sensitive issues and you know, deal with them, of course. You know, for this, all identified needs, you know, they couldn't be respond because, for example, sexual needs, you know, they are a big challenge if you want to respond to them, provide a response for them. And actually cannot be attended properly in our center. Legal issues regarding child custody can be a big challenge because, you know, the custody of child, you know, are with father and after that grandfather in Iran. So pursuing this issue can be a challenge for the center. Anything regarding rape and pregnancy by rape cannot be addressed. And domestic violence cannot be properly addressed in therapy and training. Okay, after a while, actually, we discovered that we are innocently underrepresenting women, groups of women that are using drugs. Actually, you know, piloting this program was to provide a comprehensive guideline for gender-sensitive and gender-responsive treatment programs in Iran. But, our clients came from a certain socioeconomic background, and they did not represent all group of women in Iran. So it couldn't be, actually, we cannot call it a comprehensive gender-sensitive guideline. And also we got trapped by promises of best case scenarios. For example, family reintegration work best for some women, but for some women that come from a dysfunctional family with parental drug use and spouse's drug use, it's not the best case scenario. Job finding, we have successful cases that find a job and they are living independently, but we cannot have it for everyone. And other examples like successful mother-child reunion. So it simply does not fit everyone and not even all of our clients. So nowadays we are working towards adopting an intersectional approach to gender sensitivity, and we think that it's needed in our environment. Thank you very much. Okay, Regina, would you please stop sharing my presentation?
Of course. Thank you so much, Sara, for highlighting the specific context in Iran. It's incredible to see the work you're doing in this environment. That I know that we even had some questions in the Q&A of these sort of cultural sensitive or specific contexts and how we can work with gender sensitive treatments and responses in these areas. So thank you so much for that. And I see we have good amount of time to answer questions that we have received in the chat and in the Q&A. And please, anyone who has sitting on a question that they would like to have answered, you're welcome to write it now. We will do as many questions as possible. And then if we run out of time, I will kindly ask our brilliant panelists to answer in text, which will be sent out later on. First of all, I see that Gisela has answered some of the questions already. And one of them being regarding criminalization. And I would just like to say on behalf of WFAD and this panel that our organizations do have different views on the topic of decriminalization. And what I find important is that the topics such as everybody's right to equal access to interventions and women's rights in our field is something that we can join hands on, even though we have different views on other topics. And I think that this partnership with, for example, Dianova and the other organizations, as well as this side event, is an important showcase of this, that when it comes to these topics regarding women and children, it's something we can unite on and work together to try to push for equal access for everyone. And I find that one of the most brilliant things about this joint way forward, as well as this panel. I will start from the top here, and then either if one of our panelists would like to answer it, just sort of wave, or I will ask it directly to one of you. We have one question, and I will read it. My name is Marialba Abrams, and I'm sorry for not being so good with names. I'm from Costa Rica, and I'm also a member of Youth Rise. I would like to know your perspective about feminism as a powerful tool to approach drug and psychedelic discussions inside topics like sorority, safe spaces for women and trans people, women empowerment, etc. As a feminist and activist, I believe this political position could positively bring to the table topics like social exclusion, trauma, and stigma around other women when talking about drug use. Is anybody wanting to go first here? Gisela.
I'll go, yeah. Well, when we talk about feminism, when we talk about gender sensitive treatment, of course, we are talking about just something that you not only study. This is something that you really believe, and you really implement some actions in treatment programs because you believe on them and you replicate all this kind of behavior in your life. We always say in training, specific training, that it's very difficult to have a very sensitive approach at work, and then when you go out to home not having it, it's like impossible. So this is something I think is basic. About feminism and sorority and all the kind of discussions, when we design a gender-sensitive treatment, an inpatient, on outpatient, or harm reduction, when we create a women's group, this is a must for gender-sensitive treatment. Even if it's a mixed residential treatment, you need to have only women groups in order to create that safe space to talk about specific things that they are worried about. And otherwise, if there is a mixed group, these topics won't be discussed in a mixed group. So when we have a group of women who use drugs, it's very, very important to talk about sorority, to talk about the patriarchy, to talk about the gender stereotypes, and how all the things are related with the drug use. Because when they understand a lot of these things, they can easily find a linkage. And this is very powerful for recovery.
Thank you very much, Gisela. Britt or Sara, would you like to answer as well?
Yes, please. When it comes to being active in issues and questions about girls' rights, young women's rights, older women's rights and everything, it all has to do with exactly that, rights. The same rights and the same responsibilities. Working with women issues and questions about this is representing half of the population on this planet. We are not a small group who should be forgotten in action plans and documentaries or in the work around the field. It has to do with half of the population of the planet. Yes.
Thank you. And Sara, would you like to answer something as well? No. All right, we will come back. I see we have some specific ones for you, Sara, but I'm going through the motions here. First come, first served. We have another question, but we have a question from Oriol, congratulating us for this event. Thank you. And he asks, could you say a few words about the aging population, for example, in Europe, focusing on recovery, women, and related consequences, if there are any? And I know, for instance, that WFAD works quite a lot on the aging population. So perhaps I'll invite Britt first to take the stage.
Yes, we work with women of all ages at the WFAD, and we can see when it comes to the older population of women from the age of 55 and older than that the alcohol consumption has changed very much the last 10 to 15 years. It has to do with the aggressive marketing, of course, of alcohol to target women of all ages. And why is the industry so interested in this? It has to do with that girls and women around the world today in 2021 are making more money for themselves than they ever did before when it comes to who are working in the family and bringing income to the household. So the more work and equal rights there are for women when it comes to work, good salaries, education, and so on, the more interesting we will be for all of the industries that has to do with alcohol, tobacco, narcotics, and so on. Yes. Is that an answer to your question?
Thank you, Britt. Sara or Gisela, would you like to answer this about aging population? Yes, I see Sara.
Yes, thank you. Actually, we don't get many clients from aging women, aging population in Iran, because of course we are open to women from all ages, but I think due to cultural taboos, we just have young women in our center. Actually, just young women are seeking treatment, I think. And yeah, I don't have samples of aging women to talk about.
Thank you.
Yeah,
and Gisela.
Just to add, yeah, I mean, aging population is a phenomena regarding to men and women who use drugs. In the last few years, we have in therapeutic community people, a man exactly with 72 years old, and he has been in a lot of different treatment, we are kind of receiving people with they are getting older and they need different things. When we talk about to adjust traditional treatment services, it means with gender perspective, with child rights perspective, and as well for people who need different things right now. And that's why they are getting older and they need other services and they need to do different activities during the program. And we need to rethink that too.
For sure. Thank you. And I reckon that we can work a bit together after this event to provide some links that are related to your questions that will be sent out together with the link to the recording and everything. So we will try our best to send some good international standards and best case examples as well. Our next question states, do you have any global reference or guidelines that may be used at global level to ensure gender responsive programs in drug response? Anybody who would like to answer that? Perhaps I'll ask you, Sara.
Actually, in the process of piloting Khane Parvin, actually we used lots of guidelines from other countries in the world, but many of them come from actually came from specific treatment programs, not from a actually global. They are not global guidelines, and they don't come from UN or other international agencies. Yeah.
Thank you. And I believe it was in 2016 that the CND said that they would work more with gender responsive programs within their work. So it's also something that we can hold member states accountable to, that they have stated this goal in resolutions, and also through the 2018 World Drug Report was a specific booklet on women and drugs and how we best meet the needs of this group. Gisela.
Yeah, just related to the quality standard in gender sensitive programs. Now we are working with RIOT. I know there's a few people here in the side event. We are working with RIOT and with the Catalan Federation of Drug Addiction to create a kind of checklist in order to identify those dimensions that define what really is a gender sensitive policy or treatment, whether if it's an ambulatory treatment or residential or a harm reduction services. So we are working on it, and we expect to have it at the end of the 2021.
Perfect. Thank you. Our next question is from Elias from Community Outreach Burundi, and he asks, the illiteracy and socio-economic situation can also undermine the access to treatment for women in Africa. How to proceed? I don't know, perhaps Sara, I don't know if you face similar situations in Iran that may be of help.
Yes, of course, we have the same situation for Afghan refugees in Iran. Not having legal documents and actually being undocumented is a very important barrier to access treatment in Iran. But in designing our program, actually, we deal with the governments that we can admit all people without proper identification, including refugees and from Afghan communities and other minorities in Iran. So we dealt with it actually with a kind of a good relationship with the government, but other programs in Iran, they have this problem and they cannot admit people without proper documentation from refugees and other minorities. Yeah, that's a big challenge. I don't have any recommend for it except dealing with the government or other international agencies.
Thank you, Sara. Would any of the other panelists like to answer the same question? No. I believe it's important as well when we go forward with this way forward document to make sure that we include people from all the world regions, and especially within our broad networks. We will try to do that going forward, and having, you know, we welcome input so that we can make these way forward document and these suggestions contextual into the respective environments that you're all working in. So please do not hesitate to get in touch with us if you want to support in this work going forward. I will give room for one more question, or maybe if we can do them both at the same time. And then the rest of the questions I will ask our speakers to answer afterwards and send out with the PowerPoints and everything. And this one's for you, Sara. And it says, I loved your session. I work in India and face similar issues. I would like to know, what are the main areas where the treatment for men and women differ? And what are the areas where we can put efforts to ensure better results? I would also like you to comment on the rate of relapse. I face this major issue because I try not to send them back to the community where a lot of people in the neighborhoods engage in drugs. The factor of poor socioeconomic background also plays a huge role over here, and the mental health aspect to it becomes secondary. I find that extremely discouraging. I personally try to send them to a long-term care facility, which is not always possible as well. We also follow a therapeutic community approach. So the question, going back to it, I guess you can see it, Sara, is around the main areas where the treatment for men and women differ, and where can we put in our efforts for better results?
Actually, the main differences we identified is in Iran, actually, in our communities, that it's regarding the mental health, and women who come to our center have they have very serious mental issues and mental disorders, and actually most efforts of our specialists goes to dealing with mental disorders, and it's not well addressed in men programs, and they usually don't deal with this kind of disorders. Other thing is actually sexual health, and we get clients with serious reproductive issues and sexual issues, and we need to address them, and it's very expensive, actually. And we know that if we don't do something about these diseases and these illnesses, they will not recover from drug use, and they cannot go through rehabilitation and recovery. So these are two things that we are really challenging for us, and men usually don't deal with this kind of problems. And of course, I can write about it and in details, but for now, other thing actually is children. Men usually, taking care of children is a women's responsibility in our society. So men can simply go to a treatment center and don't be worried, and do not need to worry about children. But women, they cannot find someone to take care for their children. So it's a big barrier and challenge for women if they want to go to a residential program for their treatment. And pregnancy is another thing, because a lot of these women get pregnant while they're using drugs, and unwanted pregnancy. After that, they realize that they cannot take care of the children, they cannot actually have this baby, but there's no legal way for women, and it takes a lot of effort and therapy for these women, because we don't have the option of abortion. So it takes a lot of therapy and counseling for to accept actually their situation and to go on with the treatment. I think I kind of answered the first part, and the second part was how to be effective, right? Okay, for a long term. Our program is a long-term program. Actually, it's 6 months to 1 year, and for some cases, it can ever be more than 1 year. But to some extent, some experts in our country, they come to believe that it's not possible for women to actually do not relapse, because after discharge, a lot of them go back to the family and go back to the environments that has been the root of their drug use. And, I think our successful cases have been those who have detached from the previous, from the family and from the neighborhood that they have been living, and they are detached and they have started a new life. It's maybe not realistic to say that we need to do these things, but I just can say that our successful cases have been these cases, not those who have reintegrated with the family and came back to the actually the previous circle of friends and this kind of things. I can write it in detail if you want.
Thank you, Sara. So we have reached our time, and I see that we still have a lot of questions left unanswered and some comments as well in the chat. There's one, for instance, in the chat saying that some of your demands on the UN should be addressed to the states which have ratified the CEDAW. Talk about better recognition of CEDAW and better implementation. These demands have to be addressed not to the UN, but to the countries that have ratified the convention. I don't know, Britt, if you would like.
Absolutely true. A very good point. Of course, absolutely correct. But still, it's important to talk a lot about CEDAW everywhere, because working with women issues and drug prevention and all these important things, we still meet a lot of women working within the field of this who still doesn't know that CEDAW exists. So it's very important to spread information about CEDAW everywhere. And of course, we are expecting the countries who have ratified the convention to live up to what they have signed. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So we are going to have to leave some of the questions unanswered, but like I said, we will answer these in text. And I can maybe safely say that based on the engagement and the questions and the comments that we've received, we should most probably do another webinar on the topic going forward, where we will include speakers also that can address the specific issues that are raised, for example, on the continent of Africa and in certain parts of Asia as well. So we will, of course, start planning such a webinar and send that invitation to all of you. And please, you're free to continue to chat or send emails to myself or the rest of the panel. And we will send all the information and links and everything later on. So I think it is time for me to close this side event. And I thank our fantastic panelists for giving your time and for answering these questions so beautifully and providing your expertise. And I would like to thank again our co-hosts for organizing this with us. And of course, to all the participants, it's been a real pleasure to see how engaged you are on this topic. And it really shows that we're all here to see the change and that we're working within our different areas and regions to actually highlight these issues. And hopefully in the next year, we have even more best practice examples to showcase as we go forward. So thank you so much, everyone. And I hope to see you all again very, very soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.